Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 1990's Represent. We're still in our second cycle in 1999, and this episode we're talking about Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. For a special occasion, wearing this awesome Darth Maul shirt. I've had this shirt since the movie came out. One of my favorite Star Wars shirts that I've owned. I haven't bought any more really recent Star Wars shirts, but this Darth Maul one is just one of my favorites. But back in the 1998 series, I did an episode about this, all about kind of like the hype leading up to this movie, because the trailer for Episode 1 dropped kind of like in the fall of 1998, and there was just a bunch of different like speculation about like who certain characters were, like what the story was going to be, and all that. I'll leave a link in the description where you can check that video out. But this video here for 1990s Represent is all about the movie itself, once it came out, and all that kind of stuff. So I have some notes here, and we're going to get through like the plot and all that kind of stuff as well. Let me just pull this open here. So we have Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, released May 19th, 1999. I remember it incredibly well. It was a Wednesday. And also, that day happened to be, let's see here, the day that I finished high school. We didn't graduate right then, but that day, May 19th, was my basically final day of classes. We had like the next day we had off. We had Thursday off. And then I think we had to go back on Friday for like a school, like a function for like the graduating class, and then Saturday was the graduation. But this definitely just felt like, at the time, like a great kind of reward for being like, hey, you just finished your last day of like high school or school in general, before college, of course, but finish it up, and here is on that same day you get to see this movie that you've been looking forward to for, however many years. Like, I remember, like, even when the originals came out, or originals, like, were, like, on, like, TV and stuff, it was, like, Episode 4, A New Hope, Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back, Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, and people were like, well, what happened in the episodes 1, 2, and 3? A lot of different, like, speculation, a lot of different, like, stories that people came up with, things like that. So for years after the original trilogy came out, there was kind of this whole thing of, like, what happened like prior to that. And I know in A New Hope they mentioned the Clone Wars, or like they're like, it's like the Clone Wars, even though that's the film after this one. There was just a bunch of speculation, and people just wanted to, like, see kind of like where this story started, or at least like the Skywalker story started, so to speak. So my friends and I had tickets, and at the time I worked in this really cool local toy store. We sold a lot of Star Wars stuff. Everybody that worked there was huge Star Wars fans, and we all bought tickets. So we're coming from like up in the mountains, and we ended up driving. Like, I got picked up at high school at the school at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or right when school got out, and then we drove from there for like an hour and a half. All the way to Denver to see the movie. The movie was playing locally at one of the like smaller theaters, but we definitely wanted to see it on like the biggest screen that we could find. So we ended up getting tickets to a first showing of the day, like premiere, not like world premiere, but like the first time that film was being shown at that theater. I remember there being like a huge line of people. I remember like sitting in the theater, and there's people that were like selling like soda, like actually like almost like baseball style concessions, selling like bottles of, like, I think it was like Diet Coke and stuff like that, but with like trays of them, that they would basically just be like basically like selling you the food and drink like it was a baseball game. It was the first time I've ever seen that. But I remember like the usher came out, and I was kind of like, this was the first time like I really like previews in movies. This is the first movie I remember seeing where I'm like, just skip the previews, because everybody just wanted to get to the movie. Definitely one of my favorite like theatrical movie theater experiences that I can think of. There's a few like Endgame is up there with it, stuff like that. But drove down, watched the movie, had a really good time watching it, and then we had to drive the hour and a half all the way back up here. So let's see here. And there was just like I said, like the hype around this was just insane. I think it's probably like the most hype I've ever seen for a movie. Like Endgame is up there too, maybe. Jurassic Park was pretty hyped, but I just think this being the like first Star Wars movie since 1983, first Star Wars movie in 16 years, that the hype on it was just through the roof. And it was like before, really, it was like internet was still around, but it was definitely like before social media. There were maybe like forums that people would go to discuss the movie, like web forums, maybe IRC. But like no Facebook, no Reddit, no Twitter, nothing like that. So it was still a very unique experience, and I don't think any movie that I've seen like since then has at least been that hyped up. So the hype, let's see here. Like I said, we got 16 years. I remember in 1997, I think some of the first concept art came out for it. It was like some drawings of like Coruscant, like a docking bay. Because I remember seeing the special editions when that came out. And on the Star Wars website, like around the time I think Return of the Jedi came out, the special edition, they had started showing some of the concept art for Episode 1, which was still 2 years away at that time. $115 million budget. It grossed $924 million initially. I think now after the various re-releases, like they did a 3D re-release, I think in 2012. I never saw that one, but has grossed 1.096 billion. I watched the movie recently on Disney Plus, and also like let me see what year it would have been, like 2022, so 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago, right? I forget. It was either last year or the year before. A local theater here had was showing the prequel trilogy. So they showed episode 1, 2, and 3. I think maybe the year before that or the year after that, they also showed the original trilogy. Original being like whatever the current editions that you could like watch are, that are the like slightly edited and all that. But I think the version that they showed at the this theater was also the version of this movie with the new CGI Yoda, which I actually think actually looks better than the puppet that they had for in the original release of this film. The original Yoda puppet from Phantom Menace looks kind of weird, but the CG one, they made it look more like the CG version from Episode 2 and Episode 3. So I saw it again recently in theaters, like a couple years ago, and then most recently on Disney Plus. The casting in this movie is really good. You have, I don't know if I had seen Natalie Portman in, I think, The Professional before this. Jake Lloyd, I know he was in Jingle All the Way, but I never have actually not seen that. I've seen clips of it, but I actually haven't seen the full movie. Ewan McGregor, I remember seeing like commercials for stuff like I think it was like Train Spotting and maybe like A Life Less Ordinary with Cameron Diaz. But this also may have been my first Ewan McGregor movie, and it also may have been my no, I guess I saw Kroll. Liam Neeson did Kroll. I saw that back in the 90s, but probably didn't know who it was the same person. So this is kind of like essentially like almost like my first maybe Liam Neeson movie as well. Ray Park is in this as well. Great as Darth Maul, obviously voice dubbed, but some of the stuff with Darth Maul is just incredibly done. The casting is just, like I said, really good. Samuel L. Jackson as Mace Windu is. I remember there was like running jokes about there was a thing it was just kind of like this Jabba the Hutt looked like a bitch, kind of like basically like doing like a Pulp Fiction parody with Star Wars, which actually they did. Like some animators did it several years later called Pulp Phantom. I don't know if it's still available because last time I looked for Pulp Phantom, it was no longer online. But Pulp Phantom was just a very cool Pulp Fiction like reimagining with Star Wars characters. It was like Boba Fett and I forget who the other character was because it was Boba Fett and maybe Vader. I don't remember exactly. But Pulp Phantom was really good. But apparently Tupac was also considered for the role of Mace Windu before it went to Samuel L. Jackson. That's just like Samuel L. Jackson being in a Star Wars movie, like when he is kind of known for like, at least for me, Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown movies like that was just really kind of weird. But he did well in the role. It would have been even weirder if Tupac had been in the movie, of course. But he was like murdered like a couple years before before the movie came out. Sorry. They filmed it in 1997, and then they did like reshoots and various other shots, like all the way up to like very early 1999. Let's see here. The poster, we had to talk about obviously the poster over there, an amazing poster, but the foreshadowing poster, which was the teaser poster, which has Anakin walking with the Vader shadow, just one of the coolest movie posters like ever. Very simple, very effective, just literal like foreshadowing of like who Anakin will become. So we have here. I think the movie actually like really holds up still. I know like when it came out, it was um, kind of panned by like fans because it was like there's a lot of stuff in the movie that's boring. It's a lot of like like political stuff, like trade federations blocking like trade routes to like planets and things like that. But on the most recent rewatches I've seen, like it is actually still like quite a good movie. Like I definitely feel it's probably like overhated at this point. But I definitely feel like a lot of people have actually kind of have turned around on it, and now it's kind of getting seen as being better than probably people remember it being. But like I had a lot of fun watching it the first time. There are a few things that kind of um, drag it down a little bit, like Jar Jar Binks is kind of annoying, stuff like that. But I think like all told, the movie is still like really enjoyable. And now we're gonna get to let me put the notes down. We're gonna get into the plot of this film. So it takes place, I think, like 32 years is what they're saying between episode one and episode four. But basically, it starts out with the Trade Federation blocking off the planet of the Boo with like a blockade of like battle cruisers or like what are they called, like Luger Hulk cruisers or whatever they're called. But they are blocking this planet off, and the kind of the government, the Senate, has sent some Jedi, Obi Wan and Qui Gon, to kind of do negotiations with them. So they get there, and then they are basically lured into a trap. Their shuttle gets blown up. They're on the station, but then like like this other like version of C-3PO, I forget what it's called, but brings out some like drinks, and the Trade Federation tries to like poison them with gas. Some of the action in this movie is really good because in this part you have like Obi Wan and Qui Gon just destroying battle droids. Like the lightsaber skills in this movie are just incredible, and also of course John Williams' score can't really go wrong with John Williams. And I don't know like how I rank this score compared to like the other like Star Wars films, or even against like other stuff that like other movies that he scored. But Duel of the Fates is still just this iconic like theme. Like that's probably like the one of the greatest Star Wars like songs you could like put in a film is a Duel of Fates because it goes so well with when Qui Gon and Obi Wan are fighting Darth Maul. Just like that whole like fight scene is great. We'll get to that in a moment. But Obi Wan and Qui Gon basically like fight their way out of the Trade Federation ship. They hide themselves on some of the like troop transports that get landed on the planet. They're basically preparing for a ground assault at this point. The Trade Federation then it shows that they're being controlled by Darth Sidious, who is basically or is the soon to be Emperor Palpatine. I think like everybody kind of figured that out right away. But I don't really know if they were trying to keep that secret because to me it was just obvious. But he basically tells them to land the troops down there. They do. Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon escape from on foot, and they meet up with Jar Jar. He brings them to the Gungan city underwater. Jar Jar's in trouble for like doing some stuff in the past, and they're like, "All right, cool. Like this is Jar Jar's your problem now. Like basically, like good riddance. See ya." And then they end up going through the planet core. They get to Theed, where they have another cool action sequence where they're basically rescuing the Queen, played by Natalie Portman, Queen Amidala, Padme. More cool fight scenes happen with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon just like slicing droids up, like basically like murdering these battle droids. They then get into their cruiser. They escape. Their ship is heavily damaged. R2D2 saves the day. I remember like just it was obvious it was R2 because it was like the right colors, and all the R droids are they go out onto the ship to repair it, and like they're working on like they got their tools out and they're like working on stuff, and you just see the droids get blasted off the ship, like droids are just getting fired off and like blasted off into space, and you see one droid is still up there, and it gets everything fixed. And it kind of does like it's kind of like he does this like he glares at the camera like his head like R2's head spins after he gets it fixed, and it's kind of like R2 winking at the camera, which is kind of funny. But they get it back into the ship. They're like, "Oh, this droid saved us. What's this droid's name? It should be commended." And they look over and it's just like R2D2. I remember everybody in the theater like just like erupting in applause because everybody loves R2D2. But they basically their ship is damaged now. They need to get parts for it to fix it. And I think like the closest planet they had to go to is Tatooine. So they go to Tatooine, and it's definitely far from the Republic. Republic credits don't really work there. Um, they kind of like park their ship outside of I think it's Mos Espa, but they go through Mos Espa. Jar Jar causes trouble with Sebulba, who is a Doug who basically like walks on his feet kind of thing. They meet up with oh yeah, before that they go to try to get parts from Watto. Watto's like the whole thing with mind tricks. He's like mind tricks don't work on me, only money. It's kind of funny because like it's in the movies, like you see like the mind tricks happen. Like Obi-Wan does it in A New Hope. He's like, you don't need his identification. And you see Qui-Gon do it, it doesn't work. And people like I remember that was just like a huge, like very hilarious moment where the mind trick doesn't work. He's like, well, I have Republic credits. He's like, no, these credits aren't going to do. So basically, what happens is they leave. They then have the run with Sebulba. They go back to Anakin's house for dinner, and there's talk about like potentially trading him as a Jedi because his midichlorians are like off the chart, midichlorians and whatever. That's one of the missteps of the movie is the kind of the mysticism of the Force was kind of boiled down to being like you're born with it, or like I did like in the original trilogy, it's like anybody can get the Force and use the Force. It's just like how badly do you want to use it? Are you going to dedicate yourself enough to the Force on either side, I guess, to fully utilize it? And now it's like, oh, it's a thing where you have a higher midichlorian count, so you're going to be a stronger Jedi. That was kind of a thing that I didn't really love. But they are like, this kid is probably the chosen one. And then they have Anakin's pod. Anakin has built a pod racer. He's crashed a few of them before. But they come up with the plan. What the plan is basically to bet on the pod race and basically bet for Anakin's freedom to get Anakin with them. Watto does a bunch of like other like side bets. I imagine he just loses basically all his money, and obviously Qui-Gon changes the chance cube to be because like he's like, well, if we win, we want the boy and we want his mom. And Watto's like, no, that's way too valuable. Like, it's either going to be one or the other. We'll roll the die to see, like if it's Anakin or his mom. Qui-Gon manipulates the result to make it be Anakin. Pod race happens. One of the coolest scenes in the movie. I remember like seeing that in the theater, and just like the sound is just like so incredibly good. The action is just incredible. On a future episode of this, or a future video game, but it probably won't be the next one because I don't want to do two back-to-back Star Wars videos. But Episode 1 Racer, like an amazing video game that like definitely like they take some of the best stuff from the pod racing like scenes and they made a full game about it. It's like Episode 1 Racer is a very good game. I think it was like I have it on N64, but I think it was like available on PC as well. Probably other systems, maybe Dreamcast. But the pod race happens. Incredible action sequence. Anakin, of course, ends up winning. They end up Watto is now is broke. They are getting ready to like head back to their ship after buying all the parts they need. Then they get kind of ambushed by Darth Maul. Darth Maul had kind of tracked them to Tatooine. And one of the best parts, like this movie has so many like memes and like just like internet like things that came out like that's what I call pod racing, and it's working. Sorry, excuse me. And then another one is when when there's a thing happening or a thing, and then another version of that thing pops up. It's like the trade viceroy is like, great, now there's two of them, or this is out of hand, now there's two of them. So like stuff like that really just the movie is very like meme heavy in that way. But Maul had tracked them to Tatooine, and then they have a fight with Darth Maul initially. They escape on their ship, and then they head to Coruscant to have these like Senate meetings. This is kind of where the movie kind of drags a little bit because it's some very kind of boring political stuff. But I definitely feel that it's necessary for the overall Star Wars saga to have this in there because it definitely shows how Palpatine is able to kind of just over the course of this sequel trilogy not only become like the Supreme Chancellor, but basically become like the Emperor as well. So I think it's kind of boring as far as like, it being a Star Wars thing, but I think it's necessary. So I kind of like overlook the political stuff. But they're basically trying to get the Trade Federation to back off. Um, Palpatine is basically like pulling strings behind the scenes, like as Sidious, but also as like the senator. He's like, well, if we vote for a like a what was it a no confidence in the Supreme Chancellor Valorum, which is Terrence Stamp's character, we could potentially put a new Supreme Chancellor in. And then, of course, like Padme being kind of naive at this point in the political game, like obviously goes for Palpatine or goes along with it, and that's kind of like step one in Palpatine's plan is to get himself the become Supreme Chancellor, and then in the other films he gets like the Grand Army of the Republic, which he can then basically turn into like basically his personal army, and then all that other stuff. But they have a whole thing where they basically are in like the Senate chambers, and they eventually do the thing with the no confidence in Chancellor Valorum's leadership, and then eventually Palpatine becomes like the like interim chancellor. He's like, I think he's like, well, like I'll do it until we get like the official replacement, which of course never happens. But after that, Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, Padme head back to Naboo to kind of like deal with stuff there. Darth Maul, because there's now a full-scale assault happening there, where the Trade Federation has all their like battle droid troop carriers and all that. They go back and the people in Naboo know that they can't handle it on their own, so they form an alliance with the Gungans, and there's kind of this tenuous kind of relationship between the two of them, at least initially. And they eventually come to an agreement where they're like, we'll help you. They make Jar Jar in general, like Bombad General or whatever it is. All this stuff Jar Jar does is kind of just accidentally, like it's comedy relief, but I think it maybe took it a little too far in some of those areas. But the Naboo military is dealing with the kind of Trade Federation people that are in Naboo, while the Gungans are dealing with the huge armies of battle droids that are kind of like outside the city. Like there's all those troop carriers, and then they have the whole like big shield thing comes up. So they basically it's Gungans versus like Gungan army versus battle droid army. You have during this time Darth Maul fighting with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. You have Anakin. Like you have like a huge battle happening. Like it may have been the biggest battle maybe in films like up to this point for Star Wars, because like Episode 4 you had the Battle of Naboo, which is mostly just an aerial like X-wings versus TIE fighters. And maybe during when Return of the Jedi is also pretty big, but then in Episode 5 you have the Hoth battle, which is all ground. I think maybe it kind of rivals the Battle of Endor and Return of the Jedi, because that one you have an air battle, or like a battle in space with the Death Star and like the Star Destroyers and all the rebel crafts. You have the battle on the ground with Han and Leia and like the Ewoks and all that. Then of course you have Luke versus Vader, and eventually Luke versus and Palpatine and all that. So I think the battles in Episode 1 and Episode 6 are probably the biggest. But like this one you have the Gungans fighting off the battle droids. You have the Naboo military dealing with Trade Federation that are in the city in Theed. You have Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon dealing with Maul, and then you also have Anakin in the Naboo starfighter, basically trying to take out the shield generators that are in the like the Trade Federation's like battleships. So it's a pretty big battle too. But the fight between Maul and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon is epic. It's awesome. Really cool lightsaber choreography. Ray Park definitely was shining in this movie. And Ewan McGregor and Liam Neeson do well as in the fight as well. Eventually, um, they are Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are fighting Maul, and there's like a shield thing that opens and closes. So at one point, Maul is on the other side of it, and Qui-Gon's on the other side of it, and Obi-Wan's on the other side of it. So they're all kind of isolated for like a brief moment of time. It's really cool because like Qui-Gon actually gets into this like meditative pose, and as soon as the thing opens up, it like fights back on. But Maul gets the upper hand, basically like stabs Qui-Gon right through the chest. Obi-Wan does like the no scream like we see in the trailer, and then he starts fighting Maul, and gets knocked off this ledge, and you see him just like hanging, like on like a piece of like I don't know, just like an outcropping hanging off of it. And it's one of the cooler scenes in the film because you basically Maul at this point is kind of underestimating Obi-Wan. He's taunting him. He's like swinging the saber around like into the ground, just causing sparks to like rain down on Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan basically uses the Force to force jump or pull himself up, flip over Maul, grab the lightsaber, and just slice Darth Maul in half. I remember the audience like just erupting when that happened. And then you have Maul's body falling down the shaft, and it like separates. So that was a really cool fight. You had the Gungans and then fighting. They're like you have like the tanks and all that battling each other, and then you have the scene where this is pod racing. That's when Anakin's up above, destroying the shield generators. So eventually, Maul is defeated. The battle droids are basically deactivated mostly. It's like deactivated from there because like it wasn't a shield generator, but it was like the radio control like system that controlled the battle droids was broken. Trade Federation basically gets arrested, and then they have their huge like celebration in the street where basically everybody they hold up. Boss Nass holds up the orb. He's like peace or whatever he says, and then you have the scene of Yoda and Mace Windu talking. They're like, it was definitely a Sith, and there's definitely two of them, always a master and an apprentice. And then it was like, well, who has killed the master or the apprentice? And obviously you know the master is still around because it's Palpatine. But really cool way to lead into episode 2. And just a very fun film overall. Like I have a lot of really good memories of seeing this because it was like just kind of like the perfect storm of it being on my last day of high school when it came out. A movie I had been looking forward to for a very long time. Like even before they even announced that they were doing it, there was like speculation of like what took place before episode 4. But just an incredibly good movie. I remember like this movie was so big that even other movies, well, Austin Powers 2 specifically, in its trailer was kind of spoofing Star Wars because you had like Doctor Evil kind of like in like a Palpatine like chair on the Death Star, and the voice announcer was saying something like, "If you're gonna see just one movie this year, see Star Wars. But if you're gonna see 2 movies this year, then see Austin Powers 2." Like they definitely knew that Star Wars was going to be the big hit of the year, and they kind of like rolled with that. Because remember, like Austin Powers 2, there's like that commercial where it basically is like, see Star Wars, but if you can see 2 movies, you can see our movie too. Then, but 1999 is just an incredible year for film. Like there's just some incredibly good movies. Like I remember like reading, I think it was Brian Rafferty's book, like best movie year ever. I highly recommend that book. It's all about big movies or movies that came out in 1999. 1999, one of probably, at least in the 90s, probably like the best overall year for films. Just some incredible stuff like Office Space, this, Blair Witch Project, The Sixth Sense, Fight Club, like movies I'm definitely going to be covering kind of on future. When you get to future cycles of 1999, we'll definitely be covering like a bunch of those films. But I still have a good time watching episode 1. I think, like I said, I think the general consensus now is that people have kind of had a turnaround on it and seem to actually like it. I think they actually like it more than the sequels generally. And I thought The Force Awakens, I liked The Force Awakens. I liked The Last Jedi. I know a lot of people didn't like that. I like that it tried something different. And Rise of Skywalker I didn't really like. So I definitely feel Like I go like original trilogy first, of course, and then the sequel trilogy, or then the prequel trilogy, and then the sequel trilogy. So like and even like episode 2, which is like with the really bad dialogue between Anakin and Padme, is still a lot of fun. I remember seeing that like a very late screening, um, right at like a week. It was like they did episode 1 1 week. The next week was episode 2. The week after was episode 3. Episode 3 is obviously the best one in, I think, in that prequel trilogy. But episode 1, they're all still fun. Like that's the kind of thing I think a lot of people tend to kind of forget when they were like really hating on the prequels, is these movies they're fun. That's kind of like I think like the first thing that I look for in a movie like that. So like episode 1 is still fun. Episode 2 fun. Episode 3 fun, but also very good as far as because it just was a darker tone. 4, 5, and 6 very fun. Like I said, like 7 very fun. 8 not as fun as 7, but it was still I think it had. I did like that they tried something new, and then episode 9, some fun elements, but overall not as good. But that is going to do it for this episode. We'll be back again in a few days with a video game from 1999, and then we'll be starting again over with 1990 and going all the way through the decade again. But that's going to do it for now. So remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time. Thanks again for watching. Take care and have a good one.